Are we or are we not getting student loan forgiveness? Welcome back to Wine and Chill. I'm Stephanie, your favorite recovering lawyer, and once a month, every month, I discuss how much I'm paying towards my six-figure student loan, and you know how close I am towards being friggin' done. All right, as always, these videos are retroactive, so this will be what I paid in the month of January. We're chugging along. I have some thoughts. I figured we would try something not new, but a throwback to the original when we started this series almost 4 years ago. Which this used to be solely a financial series with a flavor of how much I'm paying towards my student loans. And then we had the carrot dangle of potential student loan forgiveness. So for the past year and a half-ish, we focused on like, are we or are we not getting student loan forgiveness? My hopes were never high, but you know what? Sometimes you got to keep hope alive. So we covered all of that. I figured we'd go back to a little financial focus. So today's topic is going to be budgeting because transparently, my budget has run away from me. Yeah, or maybe I've run away from her. So let's discuss, because I'm not the only one. Updating our agenda. This agenda is completely out of order. After I filmed this video on Tuesday the 20th, the Biden administration announced that they will be forgiving $1.2 billion worth of student loans for approximately 153,000 people. So of course, we are going to discuss that so that way you have all the information available to you to know if you qualify for that. So we'll talk about that after we talk about what I paid in January. And it's Black History Month. So happy Black History Month. We're going to talk about, again, revisiting a topic that I bring up every couple of months. And the reason why I bring it up is to empower y'all and me and everybody watching to do something about it, which is the constant book ban and the banning of Black history going on. So I said those out of order. We'll talk about the book banning before we talk about the budgeting. So lots of B's. So starting with what I paid in January. If you're new here, I began my student loan payoff journey February 14th, 2020. It has officially been 4 years. That's wild. Oh, such a long time. So my starting amount 4 years ago was $304,680 and 17 trifling cents, which is inclusive of $75,000 of predatory interest. That is not all the interest. That is just the interest I calculated at that time. Because you know, the interest continued. Yeah, and then we got a pause and now we're back in the interest land. Okay. Last month in January, I paid $2,500. All right, upping the payment a little bit, which brings my remainder in February to $150,773 and 97 trifling cents, which brings my estimated total paid to $165,294 and 63 hard-earned pennies. It's estimated because yes, I did make the minimum payment before February of 2020. Sometimes, occasionally. Life was wild. Listen, my first job straight out of law school, I got paid $30,000 a year as a lawyer who passed the bar on the first try. Yeah, I wanted to work in entertainment. Entertainment notoriously will underpay you. That's why I went into tech. So it took a while before I actually was able to make big strides. So with that estimated, it doesn't account for about 4 years of repayment where I was occasionally making the minimum payment. So the estimated total paid is probably sitting around 170, 173. Yeah. Pre-potpourri, pre-pandemic, I could have bought a house. I'm not going to talk about it. What we're going to talk about is something we can fix and we can change, which is making sure this country finally acknowledges that Black history is American history. All right, on to the student loan forgiveness update. So this is from the Department of Education, which they released on February 23rd under the SAVE plan, which stands for Saving on a Valuable Education, which we've talked about ad nauseum. I am currently under the SAVE plan. It is basically a new form of income-based repayment. If you had repay, you automatically got transferred under most student loan service providers to the SAVE plan. And then for everybody else, you got to make the decision on whether or not it made sense for you. So, under the SAVE plan, approximately 153,000 people are getting their student loans forgiven. However, there are some very strict, I would say, requirements for this. So, it is for anyone who has a total amount of student loans that is $12,000 or less, and you have been making payments for at least 10 years. And this includes the forbearance period that we were in for about 3 years. Now, the average student loan borrower, the average debt is hovering around $30,000. So the question is, who is this going to help? I actually learned the other day, and this series has taught me a lot in terms of the different types of segments of people that have student loans. And about 40% of people that owe student loan debt, unfortunately, were unable to complete college. So they have been saddled with this debt that has given them nothing in return because they don't have the college degree due to either financial strain, medical emergencies, family emergencies, etc. So this should hopefully help a lot of those people. One of the things that I thought was really interesting when I first heard this, I was like, oh, what happens if one of my student loans is close to $12,000 being currently owed? Well, I was disabused of that hope after 0.5 seconds because it states here in the Department of Education's press release, the benefit is based upon the original principal balance of all federal loans borrowed as a student to attend school, not what a borrower currently owes or the amount of an individual loan. It's total. Now, the reason why I was excited for 0.375 seconds was because of my 3 remaining loans. I've been on this journey for 4 years. One of my law school student loans, the one that I'm currently paying off right now, the unpaid principal is $17,493.57 trifling cents. I like that it says unpaid interest at $0, but it really should show the interest that I have paid, which I believe for this loan hovered around 6 or 7 grand. I can't remember because this is back when I had Fed loan before I got sold off to 8 Advantage. So as you can see here, the original principal balance does not fit anywhere close near $12,000. And in the total, I've borrowed clearly way more than $12,000. The original principal balance for this loan was $43,802. So I'm close to being done with this one. And for a quick hot second, I thought Joe was going to help me. But why would I think that? And if you've been watching this series long enough, listen, we have more important things to talk about than why I am disgruntled with this administration today. One of the things I think is really interesting that is new and that I believe was implemented at least on my student loans that I could see about 3-ish years ago is you see where it says interest rate. My current interest rate is 6.410% on this student loan. My highest interest rate currently is 7.21% on one of my other law school student loans. These student loan service providers don't want any of, our chaos and commotion. So they have decided to insert in red. This is more of a recent thing I've seen in the past couple of years where it says interest rates on federal student loans are set by Congress. Now, why would our raggedy Congress people decide to set the student loan interest rate so high? That is predatory lending. And something that I think we should push them to lower. For example, I think I've brought up Australia as an example where for years their student loan interest rates were set at 2%. I believe they have risen a little bit to almost 4% now, significantly better than our student loan interest rates. So with that, I hope that some people who, are in this community of We the Debtors, that some of y'all get your student loans forgiven. If your student loans are getting forgiven, let me know. Congratulations to you in advance. And yeah, I will keep trucking along as we continue down this journey. I was so excited because in my mind, I really thought, oh, wow, if I pay $5 grand more, maybe this loan will get forgiven. And yeah, they said, nope, you thought. And I did. So on to Black History Month. So as we've covered, a lot of times on this channel, we've covered literally, I think maybe 3 years ago, Ron DeSantis, who is the governor of Florida, the initial seeds of his book ban and blaming back history under the guise of his anti-woke bill. He doesn't even know what the word woke means. Stealing words and not even know what you're teething is nefarious behavior. Now, currently, I saw last week online, and I verified it with a few of my family members who are teachers in the Miami-Dade public school system, as well as my own siblings. that in Miami-Dade County, a county with a very large Black population, shout out to us, all of us who survived the 305 as children and, under the era of George Bush. Now, to have your student read aloud from a book written by a Black American, you have to sign off in certain schools. And I want to emphasize certain schools, even though this is being mandated by the county because it's being mandated by the state, certain teachers are pushing back and saying, I don't give a damn. I will not be passing that out to my students. This is inherently racist. So shout out to those teachers. I won't clap loud because I don't want to hurt y'all's ears. But shout out to them. And we can do our part by showing up to the PTA meetings, voting in your local election. Elections are not just the big presidential snail race that will be going on in 2024. We're not going to talk about it right now. I've talked about it on Instagram. We've talked about it on Patreon. We will talk about it on here again later. It is important that we realize a part of civic duty that we learned in the 5th grade is not just the big, show pony. It does matter that you show up to your PTA meetings, which are purposely sometimes in certain counties placed at times where working class parents cannot go. Send a sibling. I'm said sibling. I happily just pop in. Send somebody to represent your child to fight for their right to learn about all of American history. Because people who don't want to learn about proper American history, they're definitely popping up at the PTA meeting. Unfortunately. I'll include some photos. So, getting back to the roots of this series, which is the F for financials, finance. I love talking about money. One, because the only way you're going to know that you're getting screwed is if you talk to other people that have more knowledge than you. That is how I learned about how to invest in my 401k at work. Shout out to my dear friend Francis, because child, I did not know. I was like, what? What is this? What does this mean? My grandpa said it to me because I was living with them at the time, and I was too ashamed to ask him how to set it up. So shout out to friends that will help you at work. Also, in terms of paying off money, in terms of debt, there are so many resources online, including this channel. There is Bitch I'm Budgeting, which I'll mention her, and we're going to go through the specific budgeting resources. There is Debt Free Gonna Be, specifically if you are doing public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF. She has gotten her student loans forgiven through PSLF. She can walk you through everything. Nika from Debt Free Gonna Be. Excellent Instagram page. Now, one of the things that often gets, I think two things get overlooked a lot when we're talking about finances is one, your budget and the privilege that comes with even being able to budget, to be honest. And then two, investing. You can't save your way to retirement. You're going to have to actually invest the money. We're not going to talk about investing today, but we'll talk about it maybe next month in that video. Today, we're going to talk about budgeting because transparently, my budget has run somewhere. And part of that has been, to be honest, on my end, relearning how to budget when you do not have your bi-weekly corporate paycheck. You are now working for yourself as a solo entrepreneur, as a content creator, as an independent girly. When this first started, I brought this up once and I was like, okay, this is how I've adjusted my budget. I had fixed expenses, which were necessities, and then variable expenses, which were things I could change. A fixed expense being my rent. My landlord does not care whether or not AdSense wanted to pay me my well-deserved rate. My landlord cares whether or not I gave them their money. Fixed expense. A variable expense would be how many times do I want to eat out this month? Which, you know what? I can make it better at home 9 times out of 10. So I should probably stop ordering Seamless. Truthfully. So with that, that's how I structured my budget. The one thing that I've been having a problem with, it has been 1.5 years, almost 2 years that I've been doing this full-time content creation, is the income that you receive is variable. It's not fixed. It's hard to make a budget when the income is variable. So for context and transparency, this is the first year where I'm like, okay, I'm going to track how much income I'm getting every month. So last month in January, she made a Q coin, $12,756. What? That is a Q. If it was that way every month, I would be so excited. It's not. This month, I stand to make, what are we at? $5,207. That's a big difference. And it's usually airing towards 5. And again, this is pre-tax. This is not post-tax. I have to give Uncle Sam about a third of that. And then, yeah. This level of variable is stressful. And I've talked about my income streams and where that money comes from, a mix of AdSense, Patreon, sponsorships, and I do manage Halise, who I adore. She has a YouTube channel and is an independent indie filmmaker and just a lovely human being. She's the only person I probably will ever manage. And yes, she will admit that she did bamboozle me into that. AKA she just asked really nicely and we work really well together. So part of that is from managing her, which means I get her sponsorships as well as negotiate all of her deals. So that's been fun to do, and that has largely helped in the past couple months as well. Now, with that being said, one of the things I find in terms of getting myself back on track, because every once in a while I do fall off the budget. You know when you're doing really well at something and then you think that you've mastered it, so then you stop looking at it and then you realize that you haven't mastered it? Yeah. Which is why looking at your budget on a, weekly basis is probably good to make sure you're on track. That's what I used to do, and I stopped doing the past few months because it was too much commotion, and I'm going to get back to that. Getting myself back on the budget train, I have really, really enjoyed Bitch I'm Budgeting, which yes, that's what it's called. Shout out to Selma, who runs Bitch I'm Budgeting over on Instagram. She does these, I don't know if they're weekly or bi-weekly, where she breaks down people's budgets. So all the people I'm going to mention, they have different types of budget breakdowns, different things you'll learn. So Bitch I'm Budgeting is very much for the girls and the femmes, and very much giving your life is in chaos and that's okay, so let me drag you for filth. So for example, I have written in my notes, it's for the everyday woman who may be in temporary chaos. It's me. It's interesting because then you realize like, oh, this could be way worse. It's not that bad. So for example, she had one last week where the young woman who was 22 years old was paying $2,300 in car insurance, because she had a few car accidents. I didn't know car insurance could be so high. Shout out to the MTA for raising the prices to where it's now almost $3, but that's not $2,300, so I will not complain. Looking at how other people spend their money, what I like about Bitch I'm Budgeting, she's less about, hey, this is the budget you told me you're on, and she literally asks for the bank statements, and then she writes out, well, this is what your de facto budget is, because it's how you spent it, and that's how you should make your budget. It's great. It's a great resource. Her community is very supportive, offers lots of help, and then you can get a tee-hee-hee little, giggle. A giggle on like, oh, okay, drag me. Preferably not by my edges. The pandemic has made them a little thin in some places. Shout out to Side Swoop. And let me get it together. So I really enjoy her. If you want to go peruse over there, I'll put some on the side as well so you can kind of see what you're going to get. Watching a few of those made me realize that what my actual budget is, not what I wrote down and told myself I'm supposed to spend, what my actual budget is, where the money is going. Maybe the past 6 months, maybe not apples and oranges, but one was A and one was D. And that's not congruent. That's not going to work. For what it's worth, a lot of my unplanned for expenses have to do with, that I'm the oldest of 7 children. And, kids ain't cheap. Neither is family. And that's okay. Part of it is I had planned for a lot of that, but you can't plan for everything. And so I have now realized okay, moving forward, I do need a larger family emergency fund. I have a separate emergency fund for my family for those types of incidences. And the keyword is maybe not have, but had. So yeah, trying to redo that. And then also part of a budget is a living, breathing thing. That made me realize okay, if we're having these incidences, these emergencies every other business day, once a month, then it's not an emergency anymore. I should write that into my budget, and now I need to make more money to accommodate this emergency that is now a non-emergency. Yeah. Because that's the truth. So watching other people sometimes helps you force reality into your own life. And that's what happened. I'm in the process now from watching all of Bitch I'm Budgeting's, her budget breakdowns of other people's money, of, giving myself a financial audit, which I haven't done that maybe 2 years. I'm a little bit afraid. And truth be told, part of me saying this out loud to y'all is that I'm going to stop procrastinating and I'm going to do it. because I have been very much operating on, well, everything is paid, everything is all right, but is it all right? Am I stressed? Yes. So it's not all right. It's not all right. And the purpose of a budget is to help you relieve stress because you put all of the money where you knew it was going to be. All right. The second one, which I have been following for years, is Money Diaries from Refinery 29. I love this one so much so that on Instagram and on TikTok, y'all know that TikTok that I go on once every blue moon because I don't like it over there and I really need to just suck it up and actually build that out. I say this all the time. I did a whole section of TikTok short form, Instagram short form reviews of Money Diaries. Money Diaries is anonymous. It's written. So if you like to read, you want to start your day, it's Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, they release them where somebody anonymously submits, women and femmes, varying generations. They had a Gen X woman on there yesterday, usually a lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Z as well. So it's nice to see the differences in terms of age, what's going on. So they submit how they spent their money for a whole week. So it's basically a diary of their money, hence Money Diaries. I really enjoy that because part of it is also how much do you have saved? How much do you have invested? What is your emergency fund? What is your annual expenses? Was there an expectation for you to go to higher learning? There are little pre-questions in it. Not only was there an expectation for you to go into higher learning, because again, we're the debtor generation with student loans. Do you have any familial support? Do you worry about money? What were your family talks about money? It gets into your money psychology. So I've always really enjoyed that series. Let me know. People have always, a few times people asked if we would do reviews of that series on YouTube. And I'm thinking maybe I'll incorporate those reviews because they were short form. I know short form is not long enough to really get into it. Maybe we'll start incorporating those into this because there are a lot of learnings in there. It's very fascinating, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Also because it is anonymous, you're fully in people's either very foolish or very sensible or somewhere in the between money. And I'm talking about people that make $30,000 a year all the way to they have some people on there that make $300,000 a year. So it runs the gamut. So maybe we can start incorporating those because those I've found very interesting in terms of you have to put on there what are your annual expenses and your monthly expenses. So then you're seeing a snapshot of the person's week. So again, at the end of it, you see how much money they spent and you see how much money they're supposed to spend for the month. Sometimes it doesn't match. And that is a great way for me, since I read them 3 times a week, to finally realize like, you know what? If I were to submit a money diary, this shit would not match. It would not match, not because I'm going and being frivolous, but because I am being supportive in a way that does not show the budget. And that is something largely I would say that I've always learned in corporate. There's black tax. When you're a black person in this country, most likely you're not supporting just yourself and your immediate family if you have children, if you have a spouse, a partner, etc. But you're probably also supporting extended family. And it is okay to admit that out loud, verbatim, into yourself, and then to write it into your budget to also realize when you are maxed out and you're like, you know what? We're all gonna drown because I don't know what's going on. I think in terms of transparency, it's good to let them know like, hey, I'm tapped out, like I can't help with anything else this month because it will remove the guilt, but also it, helps with honesty for what it's worth. Then one that I've mentioned forever ago and that I haven't mentioned in a long time, but I do love watching it. So we've gone from shorts that are a little bit audio and visual to full on, you want to sit down and read just text, to now videos, long edited videos, which is Ramit Sethi over I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Again, I hate the name of his segment. I wish it would be something called something else because it gives off scammer and he's the farthest from a scammer, I would say. Like he actually is giving you sound advice. I really enjoy it. I started watching him on Netflix when he came out on Netflix. Maybe last year, the Netflix show came out, and then started watching the podcasts over here on YouTube, which is free if you don't have Netflix. That is when you're going to see chaotic couples counseling. Yeah. So if you are partnered, or you have any interest in being partnered, I would watch those. Most of them are red flags of what not to do. It's stressful. Also watch it probably with a glass of wine because those people, particularly if you see yourself in the people on the screen, they will stress you out because you have 2 people. Most of the couples he interviews are either in long-term partnerships or they're married where one partner has not looked at the money in years, if ever. It's usually gendered, I would say. You see a lot of, not all of, but a lot of women on that show where their partner has told them, I got it, babe, everything is fine. That automatically is a jump scare to me, particularly because it reminds me of that video that I did forever ago about the rise of sovereign citizens and the intentional scamming that cohort of people do. And largely what goes unsaid and what I actually didn't mention in the video was brought to my attention afterwards. It was mentioned for a second, I think, and it was brought to my attention afterwards because I received a lot of DMs on Instagram about it, is sovereign citizens, which are people who don't believe in paperwork. That's just the basic line of that. You can go watch that video. It's a great video about what all the beliefs are, in that they believe they don't have to pay taxes. Sometimes that there are some type of loopholes that don't exist. There are tax loopholes, not the ones they think that exist, etc. Cause commotion in the courthouse, etc. However, one of the things that is also equally nefarious in terms of what largely these men that are sovereign citizens are doing is they are financially abusing women. They are basically becoming squatters in certain instances and then claiming squatters' rights, moving into women's homes, getting control of their bank accounts. I received numerous Instagram DMs of women saying, oh my gosh, thank you for doing this video. My husband fell into Forex and then fell into sovereign citizen. Child, multiverse. Alternate reality, and that caused divorce, that caused them to file bankruptcy, etc., etc. I cannot relay how important it is and how many times we have actually talked about financial abuse on this channel, to always have Vex money, have somebody told me their family called it hussy money from down south, have your money set aside, but to also, if you're in a partnership, to tell the other person like, hey, it's not about nosiness. We are both living here under this roof. I need to know if eviction notice is coming tomorrow. Did you actually pay that bill? What have you been doing? So I highly recommend Ramit Sethi and his series if you're partnered, for you to go over there and be like, child. And maybe, you know what, if you're partnered and you're like, yo, I have a feeling that the money is funny, maybe, just put it on while your partner is somewhere in the vicinity, slowly, and let them watch it with you. I have seen people in the comments say that they've done that in terms of trying to get their partner on board of like, listen, I'm not sinking in this ship with you. And then the last resource that I've mentioned as well, that we can maybe do some like reactions incorporated into this video series, because student loan payoff series will exist until I pay off my gosh darn student loans, is ESI. It's just Earn, Save, Invest, ESI Money. They have a series called Millionaire Interviews. It's one of my favorite. I think I've been reading it, like not too long after I graduated, like almost at least 5 years, if not 8 years. It's a blog. It's really great. It's so informative. It's very informative. So it basically goes through the tenets of that person's financial ethos is earn, save, invest. And it should be noted that is for those who you're like, listen, everything in my life has gone well. Hey, sometimes you're just very privileged and fortunate. That's all right. Help other people. And you have maneuvered a lot of things to where you have forced it to go well. It's not for the beginner, I wouldn't say. When I started reading that blog, it was very aspirational. It was very much like, I don't understand anything about investing. They're talking about 401ks, they're talking about brokerage funds, they're talking about syndicates, etc. I think I stumbled across that because I wanted to know, since I worked in tech for so many years, should I or should I not actually exercise my stock options? When you work at a startup, usually they'll give you equity in the company. It's gambling. It's monopoly money at first. You don't know if they're actually going to have an exit event, so an acquisition or an IPO. I didn't know. I was the first person in my whole family to work at a tech company. I was one of 2 Black employees in said tech company. I didn't know. I went over there and was like, okay, let me, see what other people who have made it how have they invested their money? And that was really helpful. One of the things that I like about their Millionaire Interview series is it's not about hoarding, and it's more so geared towards, hey, I just want to retire with some dignity. which is really interesting. And by millionaire, they count anybody with $1 million, either liquid or illiquid, which is really interesting. They require bank statements, and it's a whole diary of like, how did I make this money? Here is my income over the past 10 years. This is my investment strategy. This is what I spend my money on. Do I have a spouse? Do we have children? This is how we talk about money, etc. Very fascinating. And a lot of it, 99% of it is regular people, and it's anonymous. So 99% of it is just regular people who have regular corporate jobs, and the average interview age, having read it for this long, I would say is like 60 years old. So you're having older people, boomers, which again, it should always be noted, they inherited a very different economy. So all of these things, one of the things to point out is they don't take into account at all any type of systemic issues. These are all very individualist ways to make sure you are right. You have to do the individualist with the systemic, because unless you fix the system, such as student loan forgiveness, would have helped fix the system of why is education so high to begin with? Why did the Congress set student loan interest rates? Why did Congress set student loan interest rate to 7.21%, 7.45%? That is a problem. You have to fix them both at the same time, because unfortunately we live in a capitalist hellscape. With ESI.com and their millionaire interview series, it is so fascinating to me to see people who have basically moved through their entire career at the exit point, at the point of like, hey, I'm retiring now, or I'm thinking about retiring. These are all the steps I took. These are all the steps I tried to take. And this is how now at 63 years old, my nest egg is $2.1 million. There are a few young people on there. I read one last week where they were 37 years old. And I was like, 37 years old. The differentiator being, when there are young people on there, almost always it is somebody who owned their own business and then sold the business. Almost always. Majority of the people interviewed on there, however, are not business owners. There was a teacher on there once, which I thought was fascinating. I would say one of the observations and criticisms, which it's less a criticism about the blog and more a criticism of systemic racism in this country, the blog skews heavily white and male, because it does ask your gender, and then it asks if you are partnered, because if you're partnered, you're more likely to be able to save more money because it is less expensive, allegedly, when you live with somebody, unless you live with a spendthrift. And the few times that there has been Black women featured on the website, they always say that they're Black women, and they always point out like, oh, that the blog helped them a lot, and that they're very excited to, add to the very little representation of Black women specifically, or Black men. There have been a few Black men on there, and I can count them. I have them saved. And specifically when the millennial interview is conducted on a Black person, or there have been a few immigrants as well, Latino, like maybe one or two Latino immigrants on there as well. If it's a Black or brown person, they specifically say how they are one of one in their family, how this is not the norm, and how they've had to circumnavigate certain things, which really highlights that we have a growing racial wealth gap in this country that was already high to begin with, but now is astronomical. So I do appreciate people pointing that out in that series, and I do recommend that series. If you're like, my budget is under control, I know for the most part what I'm doing, I've saved some money, and you're kind of like, okay, I have a basic investment strategy, but any of that fancy stuff, like you don't really know what it is, ESI Money is a great place to start, and they've numbered them. I'm going to tell you right now what the Millionaire series is on. They are on Millionaire Interview 380. Currently, and that's from February 8th, 2024. And the series has been going on so long that they now do millionaire interview updates. So they talk to people that they interviewed like years prior, and then they let at least 3 years pass from the initial interview, because the series has been going on, 7-8 years. So those are always really interesting too. So we can do those, I would say, in this economy, because that's so far off. Maybe we'll just incorporate some of the investment parts of the learnings there, and not necessarily the whole thing, because we're more so, I think, in today's economy, the majority of, including myself and people watching this, we're more so in the bucket of Money Diaries, Bitch I'm Budgeting, and Ramit Sethi's Full Chaos Commotion of I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which, for what it's worth, that man is so calm when these people are on his show in complete disarray, because me and my face would literally be like trying to hold it in, especially some of the episodes where it's clear financial abuse is occurring. Like, It's very sad. So let me know out of those 4 which ones you're interested in, and I'll start incorporating those reviews into this series. So then, we can get our money together. Yeah. All right. On that note, I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all have a lovely Black History Month, and I will catch y'all in the next video.